lecture, I'd like to introduce Frank Buckler, PhD, from our good friends over at Success Drivers in Cologne, Germany. Success Drivers is a consultancy you may have heard of, and they do basically analytics-based marketing consulting for a lot of big brands and a lot of great companies. They have offices both in Cologne, Germany, and in lovely Santa Barbara, California. So thank you very much for joining me here today, Frank.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
So, one of the topics that I was interested in talking to you about is artificial intelligence. I know this is an area of expertise for you, and I feel like these days that people have a lot of questions about artificial intelligence in our industry. Frankly, there's been a lot of companies who promote having artificial intelligence-based strategies or solutions, but I think there's also a little bit of skepticism. I know, to be honest, I'm a little skeptical that when you see so many companies talking about how they have an AI-based approach to doing some form of market research, I have to wonder, is it really AI or is it really just an elaborate rules-based or Boolean logic-based system? So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about AI and whether or not it's real.
Yeah, it is truly a hype, and to be honest, a hype is sometimes needed to promote good technologies. Actually, indeed, I also found that many AI promoted tools aren't AI at all. So yeah, often basically companies uh, call it AI when it is an automated decision, and you can automate decisions with rules, right? Some guys call it AI when they use kind of regression, which is basically a rule with adjusted parameters. Yeah, you can understand. Okay, a kind of a regression, which we know for many decades, learns also from data, but this is we won't call it AI, but it's also AI is not heavily defined. So there are different definitions of AI. But the probably best fitting definition of AI would be when companies use kind of machine learning techniques. These are self-learning mechanisms. It's basically um, like conventional statistics, they learn which kind of parameter is best to do a certain decision, right? But AI find the whole formula, not just a parameter. It can change the formula. Uh, um, Basically, the formula between input and output. It changes according to data, according to learning. It makes experience and can change and can learn how things relate to each other and how best to respond to certain situations.
So is that a good sort of general distinction that somebody who may not be highly technical can use? If it's static rules or elaborate Boolean logic, that's not AI.
No, no.
Okay. But we all, I think, agree that there are some products out there that market themselves as AI that really are more just those static rules and very elaborate logic.
It is, and I have to mention these AI techniques, which are advanced, are available, technically available since 20 years. There's only incremental innovation, but they mainly haven't found application for the market research. So this hype helps them to grow because people get interest now. Of course, many others jump onto the same wave and want to use it, and that's how it goes always.
True. I'm always surprised, for example, uh, discrete choice has been around for decades, and yet I
Mhm.
still meet people for whom they think it's a new thing, or they don't realize that it's been around as long as it has.
Yeah.
And so that's always interesting to me. So AI hasn't has technically been around for 20 years, as you say, although it does feel like just in this past year, there's been a flood of AI
Yeah,
related announcements specific to market research and consumer insights.
exactly.
Excellent. Now, help me with an example. I know that one of the things you're doing a lot of advanced work on is in using true AI for advertising testing. And I love advertising testing because it's such a concrete example of using data to really inform important business investments. If I were, say, hypothetically, a client that makes tooth whitening products and I want to do some ad testing, how does AI come into that?
So, first of all, I would advise to do a good or conventional or advanced copy test, which kind of measures the implicit reaction, basically the emotion, which is evoked by the ad within the audience group. However, you need, or what AI can provide is two more things. Uh, it can basically give the information how the ad is doing within the customer group. Will this really sell? So in ad testing, you find, okay, it makes people happy, but how much will be sold in 2 months? That's point first. What can AI really help and can predict what will be the in-market performance? And the second thing which AI can do, if you set up the system right, is to understand why did this ad make you happy. Of course, you could say, we ask our respondents, why were you happy? But typically, this is it's an approach which is valuable, but it is not enough to really because many things are implicit and not really known. And the tool which we launched last year in a global multi-category study basically not just tested the ad, it profiled hundreds of ads according to objective criteria. And this profiling information, so it profiles it on a code book. Basically, it said, okay, which kind of emotional trigger the creator was wanting to have in the ad, as well as which creative techniques are used. For instance, if you talk about these toothpaste, some toothpaste ads, they have a spokesperson and showing it and saying, use this because this and that. And you might find this boring or old-fashioned, and that's why this get more and more brands choose different ways. But what we found is that this technique, for instance, of having a spokesman, is very effective when you want to convey a certain message. If you just want to have branding, that's not the case. But if someone, your target group should learn a certain fact, you should have a person saying something very simple, face to face. That's the best way to bring across a message, not a brand message, but when you have certain ingredients which are very, very important. And this is just an example that there are hundred of different creative tactics you can do, right? And 100 different emotional triggers you can try to pull. And what of those are effectful? Yeah? And this is what AI can extract. It can learn out of hundreds of ads and thousands of responses what really made people happy and what is the causal reason for making happy and building brand and selling the product.
So that's very interesting. So you talk about having, over 100 different things that could drive people to have a positive reaction to a brand. And so the AI aspect of this uh, is not necessarily in it has to do with the complexity because there are so many potential variables here that could be interacting. So there's a lot of complexity. So a lot of times when we do more conventional ad testing, which could be using focus groups or traditional surveys, or in the last few years, a lot of people have started to use facial analysis to gauge emotional reactions. Well, with the facial analysis products that I've looked at, I think they track like 8 or 10 specific emotional reactions, right? They have those micro expressions that they've cataloged and that they can identify. But you're saying with AI, I might be able to capture 100 different types of items that could be having a sort of causal relationship, if you will, on the output of what is my reaction.
Yeah. So in copy testing, you measure just response, right? But the interesting thing is, if you ask creatives, marketing agencies, if you want to give them a briefing, they have very specific questions. Should I use a celebrity? Should I use a voiceover? What kind of music should I use? And hundreds of or dozens of questions. And those questions we can ask if we not just look at the response, but really profile ads and then ask the AI what of those objective criteria made people laugh, made people think about it, and so forth. So AI is not is not something which is basically will substitute copy testing. No, it is something which will improve it. It is something which goes on top and will not just test, it will find out what are the key success drivers of creatives and what drives, and it will prove the link towards in-market performance.
So if I'm understanding this, part of the magic sauce here is having the data from many ads. It's almost like an elaborate benchmarking.
Yeah, right. But with benchmarking, you just compare, for instance, two different variables, and comparing is like correlation. It's has spurious insights. Yeah, the AI is basically a multivariate analysis, but more flexible, and thus it eliminates spurious findings, and it really understand what's the specific causal contribution of a certain success driver.
And then what's the output of that? So if you go through an exercise, again, if I am selling a tooth whitening product and I get to the end of this exercise, what kinds of conclusions am I getting? Am I getting a success prediction for that particular ad? Am I getting you know, a return on investment prediction for that particular ad? What specific data am I going to get at the end of an exercise like this?
So yes, all of that basically we can have is this ad exceptional? How much will it sell with some assumptions? But basically, will it meet the in-market expectations? But then, most importantly, which is important basically before creating the creative, is it will provide major guidelines for producing advertising. So it will tell you, for instance, don't do voiceover because you will sell 5% less, or so. Choose a music with its lyrics, where the lyrics correspond to the message of your spot, and this will sell 25% more. And this kind of granularity, so guidelines which are, it does not tell the creatives what to do, but it gives a guideline what not to do, basically.
No, I love that, and I love that specificity as well. That it can we can use this to understand, an actual percentage increase or decrease in the effectiveness of that specific ad. So
Mhm.
that is fantastic. One of the things that I do see sometimes with clients that are doing ad testing is they're also very concerned about the ad length. Can I get by with a 15-second spot, or do I need to do a longer spot? Does advertising length come into play here?
Sure, yeah. It's basically an objective criteria which comes into the data set. And basically the AI can quantify um, what does it basically, what does it, where's the saturation, for instance. Yeah? Is 20 minutes basically the same as 30 minutes? Of course, it is still a market research framework. An ad may work differently when it is in the field. It may work different in the evening or in the day. So it's, of course, it's only a proxy, but yeah, AI can improve the predictive power and the insight power basically. When I talk about AI, I mean basically machine learning type of techniques.
Excellent. So thank you. This has been extremely helpful. Um, I just want to make sure that I am doing a good job here. And so I want to kind of recap where I came through with my questions. So first we talked about the difference between AI and just having some rules-based kinds of things. And so my takeaway from you, you being the expert on this, is that yes, there are products out there, or sometimes when people are talking about AI, they might be using the phrase a little bit loosely. So we should be careful that if somebody is talking to us about AI, if we understand, is it truly AI? Is it truly machine-based learning, or is it just elaborate rules? And in some cases, elaborate rules can be fine, but we should just understand what the difference is. Um, the second question we went through was an example, and I love this idea that we can look at so many different factors. I think you said over 100 different factors, so that we can really understand really the true, complexity. And I especially like what you talked about, where sure, we can ask people to self-report if they like an ad, and we can ask people to self-report if an ad is going to influence their purchase behavior. But of course, we know that that is I don't want to say a faulty way of doing things, but it's limited. We know that it's hard for people to accurately self-report their emotional responses, their attitudes, and it's very difficult. There's a lot of research on how difficult it is for people to self-report their future behaviors. So I love
Yeah.
the idea of having a way of doing this that listens to the self-reported but augments it with something that's much more sophisticated and based on analyzing many, many ads. So I guess then that brings me to my last question, although I think I know the answer now, is when would I use AI for ad testing as opposed to these other methods? And if I'm understanding you right, Frank, you would say those other methods still apply. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that whatever data collection method that we're using, that we can integrate it with a way of analyzing it so that we can really truly capture all of these very complex relationships.
Yes, totally agree. I just want to add one thing. It is kind of a two-step approach. Yeah, the first step is, as you outlined, to understand what creative techniques drive my category,
Mm,
and and how does the things I can measure in the market research translate to in-market performance. We can learn that in the first place. And then you can start testing your ads, and you can test it with if you test it with the same methodology, market research methodology we did in the first run. Basically, we can then predict in-market performance. So because we know then the link of the purchase intention measure and the happiness measure and so forth towards in-market performance. So testing again and again it's much simpler and less expensive, and it's still benefits from AI because AI was already built with a larger data set.
I love it. I love this, constant optimization. The continuous improvement aspect of this is very exciting. Excellent. Well, Frank, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I think this is a really important topic, and I know that your firm is doing some really interesting work on this. So I was wondering if you could just tell us quickly, what's going on here with this specific program that you're offering right now.
Right. Actually, we in this year we launching the second wave of the creative AI project, which is basically a multi-client study. So we did last year a multi-client study where we did a large copy test. Basically, we measured the emotional response, purchase intention, brand strengths of ads, for lots of ads in 6 different categories. Plus, we profiled every single ad using a code book. Basically, we described what is happening in the ad. And with this data, we applied AI and found the drivers of 6 different categories and what drives success in there. And it's very nice insights. And this year, we do it again and improve that further. The improvement, what we will do is we will recontact every respondent and ask them whether or not he bought. 2 and 4 weeks later, and we will only interview those who plan to do a purchase in the product category in the time ahead. And with this data, we will basically build models in different product categories. What I talked about, basically. We will again understand per product category what kind of creative techniques drive performance and how really purchase intention measurement can be used to predict in-market performance.
Excellent. That's really exciting, but I have to ask, can you tell me what the categories are?
So basically, we are very open to any category as long as it's not too low incidence rated. We even plan to have banking or automotive. This will a little bit more higher priced. However, if a company wants to open a category, we can do that.
Fantastic. Frank, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure getting to chat with you. It's always nice to talk to people who know so much about AI and machine learning. I'm sure we could spend hours talking about it and, helping, practicing market researchers and consumer insight specialists understand this. So thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to chatting with you again in the future.
Looking forward to it as well. Have a nice day, Catherine.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.